Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Could I please ask you to please take your seats? I'd like to extend a special welcome to Dr. Judy Dlamini, Ms. Nafundu Mbuli, Prof. Tuana Kupe, Professor De Jager, Professor Mike Satege, our panelists, and also a special welcome to our online audience. It is with great pleasure and excitement that I welcome you all to the book launch of Doctor of Hearts, the biography of Bongani Mayosi, authored by the esteemed Dr. Judy Dlamini. This evening, we are here to celebrate the life and work of a truly remarkable individual, Professor Bongani Mayosi. He was a brilliant cardiologist, an inspiring teacher, and a passionate advocate for medical research and education. His contributions to the field of medicine and cardiology in particular were immeasurable, and his legacy continues to inspire generations of doctors and researchers. Dr. Judy Dlamini's book, Doctors of Hearts, is a powerful tribute to the life and work of Bongani Mayosi. It tells the story of his upbringing, his academic and professional achievements, his struggles, and his triumph. Throughout this biography, we gain a deep understanding of what drove him, what inspired him, and what made him an exceptional human being. But this book is not only about Bongani Mayosi. It's a testament to the power of education, the importance of research, and the impact that one person can have on the world. It's a reminder of the challenges that we face as a society and the importance of working together to find solutions. As we launch this book today, we pay tribute not only to Dr. Bongani Mayosi, but to all those who work tirelessly to make our world a better place. We celebrate the power of education, the importance of research, and the spirit of collaboration and innovation that drives progress. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Professor Tiaan De Jager. Professor De Jager is the Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences. He's also the director of our UP Institute for Malaria Control, and he's a professor in environmental health at the School of Health Systems and Public Health here at the University of Pretoria. Professor De Jager, over to you.
Esteemed guests, Professor Tuana Kupe, our VC, also our visitor, Professor David Nabaro, who will be receiving his honorary doctorate tomorrow. Welcome. Family of the Mayosi family, esteemed guests, all protocol observed. It's my honor to introduce to you our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Tuana Kupe. But just to start off by saying, this is a short bio because Professor Kupe doesn't like long introductions. Professor Tuana Kupe is the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria since 2019. He holds a DPhil in Media Studies from the University of Oslo in Norway. In December 2019, he received an honorary doctorate from the Michigan State University and another from the University of Montpellier in October 2021. Professor Kupe has recently been appointed as the Knight of the French National Legion honor in recognition of his remarkable achievement in promoting scientific and academic cooperation by the President of the French Republic. He's the founder of the African Center for Study of the United States at both UP and another university. Professor Kupe is an active member of several civil society organizations and is a board member of a number of tertiary education networks and organizations globally. Professor Tuana Kupe.
Thank you, Professor De Jager, for that a short introduction, which, as you know, there's an incentive for a short introduction of me. Your performance bonus is guaranteed. You forgot to say that. Today is both a wonderful and also a day of very deep reflection. I personally did not know Prof. Wangani Mayosi much, but we spoke a couple of times when he called me to ask about the transformation program that I was responsible. Today we can't call this university another university because we have the chancellor of this university here, Dr. Judy Dlamini, and I was responsible for managing her becoming chancellor, or on the sort of understanding that I might become vice chancellor. Then I left to UP, and she was not amused. So I keep calling her my chancellor in honor of the informal pact that we had. But Dr. Dlamini and I have always worked very closely together. In fact, this project is one result of our working together closely. When she sent the email saying that we should have a launch of these books, or in fact to purchase 100 books and to launch the books, I think I can claim without checking with her that I was one of the first person to say yes without hesitation, in part because I admire the work that she has done, and anything she says should happen, I take it as an order and I just execute it. Good evening. May I extend a very warm welcome to everyone here tonight, including, as the Dean said, Professor David Nabarro, a giant of public health and food nutrition, food systems, and all of those who are honoring here tomorrow. And he gladly heard about this and decided to join us. While we almost certainly wish that the circumstances around this event were different, I'm grateful that we are able to honor and celebrate the life story of an African legend, because he was nothing more than an African legend, Professor Wangani Mayosi, through the launch of Doctor of Hearts, the biography of a man known by many as the Madiba of medicine. This is because of his incredible contribution in the field of medicine in South Africa, and he was not just a South African figure, but also on the African continent. If you ever spoke to him, he was very keen on seeing the entirety of our continent as well, especially in diseases of poverty that affect the heart. He became the first black person to be head of medicine at the University of Cape Town, and the youngest that UCT ever had. He is well known for discovering the CDH2 gene mutation causing, now you see I didn't do medicine, arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, a tremendous accomplishment that is regarded as one of the greatest medical achievements in South Africa since the first heart transplant. So you can see the league he was in the league of Chris Barnard. Professor Mayosi has a reputation for having been a great mentor to many of Africa's productive clinicians and researchers, and for structurally transforming access to opportunity and funding in clinical research. I think it's important to emphasize structural transformation, because it's easy sometimes to make, help some other people get access here and there, but the barriers remain. But if you transform the structures, you open it up for everybody. That's a tremendous achievement, especially and funding in clinical research. Leading the continent's first Pan-African clinical trial, a multinational trial by Africans led by African institutes. A special welcome this evening to Nomfundo Mbuli, Professor Mayosi's sister. Like her late brother, Nomfundo is passionate about the health sciences field and has worked in international development agencies, managing funding support for HIV, sexual and reproductive health and rights programs in the countries of East and Southern Africa for more than 20 years. We are very glad that you can be here sharing in this significant time with us, Nomfundo, as we reflect on Wangani Mayosi's life beyond his professional realm, to include memories related to his role as a brother, a son, a husband, a father, and a friend. We are also honored to have the two esteemed authors of Doctor of Hearts here with us, My Chancellor, Dr. Judy Dlamini, I haven't resigned from from UP, by the way. When I say my Chancellor, meaning the Chancellor of WITS, is the founder and executive chairman of the Mbekani Group of companies she founded more than 25 years ago. She's the Vice Chancellor, Wits University Chancellor. Vice Chancellor is a demotion. People don't realize that a Vice Chancellor is the deputy of the Chancellor. The only boss you ever have as a Vice Chancellor is the Chancellor. It's just that the Chancellor is not around, so you look like the boss of the place. And that is why Vice Chancellor run around thinking they are. She's also at the Wits Gordon Medical Center and the GBVF Response Fund chairperson, founder and chairperson of the Female Academic Leaders Fellowship, NPC, and Sifiso Publishers, founder of Mukiwa Trust, co-founder of Future Nation Schools, and non-executive director of the South African SME Fund. Dr. Dlamini rise to inspire and empower. And in addition to Doctor of Us, she has written Equal but Different, The Other Story, and Grow to Be Great. Now I'm quite sure, knowing as I do, there's a lot of other books in her laptop that will come out over time. Dr. Kapanyo Mabaso is a medical doctor by training with a master's degree in global health sciences and a PhD in population health, both from the University of Oxford, where she attended as a Rhodes Scholar. Dr. Mabaso has received numerous awards and honors for her work as a public health physician and social entrepreneur, including being selected as a Young Mandela, World Economic Forum Global Leader, Emerging Voice in Global Health, IMMP Physician Leader, Archbishop Desmond Tutu Fellow, and an Aspen New Voices Fellow. Outside of her public health work, she's an award-winning writer, and her novels, Coconut, Spilt Milk, and Period Pain, have been translated into close to a dozen international languages. We look forward to hearing more about this book, which was contributed to by authors in their personal capacity, and which covers different chapters of Professor Mayosi's life from no less than 78 contributors. His wife, Professor Nonhlanhla Khumalo, and close friends share the last week of his life before he ended it on 27 July 2018. May all be inspired to take Professor Mayosi's great legacy forward, and may Doctors of Hearts help to heal the pain of the continent's profound loss. This regard, I think, ladies and gentlemen, it is true to say that Professor Mayosi lives on, and he must live on in all of the good that we must do. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kupe. I'd like to introduce our sixth panel member for today, and that is Professor Mike Satehe, who's seated with us, and then we'll start with the panel discussions. And please feel free to ask any of the panelists any questions. Professor Mike Satehe is a professor and head of nuclear medicine here at the University of Pretoria and Steve Biko Academic Hospital. He also heads the South African Nuclear Medicine Research Institute, and internationally, he is one of the two editor-in-chiefs of Seminars of Nuclear Medicine Journal. He's the editor for Image of the month of the European Journal of Nuclear Medicine and Molecular Imaging, and he's the associate editor of the World Journal of Nuclear Medicine. Professor Mike has performed several of the first in-human studies leading to more than 230 publications in accredited journals. He was also honored to unveil the Bongani Mayosi Lecture Theatre at the University of KZN Medical School. So thank you, Professor Mayosi, and thank you to all our panelists for joining us today. I think I'm going to start with the panel discussions, and I'd like to start by asking Dr. Judy Dlamini, what inspired you to write the book, and how difficult or easy was it for you to get information? You've interviewed many of the family members, colleagues, and you've really managed to bring the book together and tell us a great deal about Professor Mayosi's life. So if you can just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write the book.
Thanks very much. Thanks for everyone who's come, and thanks to my VC. He's right. He was the first person I called. I said, 100 books, book launch, we set. And he said yes, and thanks for that. I just want to apologize for Dr. Kopano Mabaso. She's traveling, that's why she couldn't be here. But it was an honor to work with her. It's actually interesting how there's intergenerational transfer of skills and knowledge, which is exactly what happened. Why this book? Bongani was my junior. Bongani and Nonhlanhla were my junior at medical school. 1983, they came to do first year, and I was in fourth year already. And my husband and I loved the two of them. And you could see from that we're together actually at University of Natal. She was at Howard College, we were at UNB, Nomfundo and I. And we expected a lot from him because he had delivered a lot already in his 51 years of life. So when he passed on, it just felt like something has just pulled something so precious away from us. And when you lose something precious, someone precious, there's always mixed emotion. There's anger, there's pain, and a lot of emotions. And I've always found it easier to turn negative energy into positive energy. So as I sat on the 4th of August, 2018, to bury him in Cape Town, I just thought, people that are not in academia don't know about this guy. The only thing they'll ever read about is the last few weeks of his life and what happened. And it was so much more than that. And it is that I said, I'll ask the family if we can honor his life and celebrate his life. And the book is really about that. It's celebration of a life well lived, a life that had a multiplier effect, not just in this country, but in the continent. And he made us look good because of who he was. So I'm very grateful that Bongani then asked Kopano and I to write the book. Mixed emotions, mostly positive, mostly, when you lose someone at 51, you then look at what they had achieved in that time. And VC spoke about structural changes, and he really did that, going into the continent and starting ethical committee, what do you call them? Offices. Because it's so difficult to do research unless you have those amongst many other things, raising funds and so forth. But yeah, that's a very long answer to a short question.
Thank you. Mr. Mfundo, I'd like to ask you, I've seen here you, Professor Mayosi's cousin, but you were at University of Natal at the same time, and in the book it says, Nomfundo loved partying, while Bangani saw this as a time for studying to stay ahead. And you quoted here in the book as saying, he advised me to start a routine of revising the day's work after each day of lectures. As we progressed in life and followed different careers, he took an interest in our progress. He made you feel that your progress was solid, and even when you would not feel that you've achieved your, or even when you've not felt you've achieved your goals. That was Bongani for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship? What was he like? I understand he's quite a structured person, got up at 4:30 a.m. every morning, did his push-ups, and then got to work.
Yeah, we grew up, you say I'm his cousin, first cousin. I'm the oldest in my family. Their family, they are 5 and was 6, but we grew up very close. Bungani's father and my mother were brother and sister. And so every December, they would go to our family in Durban, we would spend holidays together, and then we would move to their family. So we were quite tight. And then, in fact, I called him Gigi. But I did not know what it meant, the word Gigi, until later our aunt, Bungani's mom, told me, no, he was a giggly baby. He laughed a lot. And I think anyone who knows him knows that he had this giggly and smiling all the time. A very kind person, sensitive, charming, passionate, compassionate, kind, all of these things that were positive. So as we grew, my cousins, of course, would tell me that they had gone for holidays, maybe in London. And then Mongane, the first things he would do when he gets there, he would say, hey, I need to know where the library is. And then when they come back from whatever excursion, he would say, so what was your take of the day? What did you see? So he was that very person from the word go, very inquisitive, curious, serious if you like, but playful, very joyful person. And then when we went to university, I think he found me there. Judy was already ahead of us. So he found me there. Us, we are very excited, starry-eyed. Wow, we're out of our families for the first time. You know, this is fun. And I recall that there was a room on Fridays that the light would turn red because now the party is starting. And then I think he watched this. One day he says to me, whose room is this? I'm saying, which one? He says, that one that turns red on Fridays. I said, it's one of my friends. He said, no, he didn't say anything. So one day he says, how's things going? And I already, because we're partying Fridays, he said, how's things going? I said, hey, struggles here and there. He says, okay, let me tell you what I do. I'm not intelligent. I said, oh. He says, I'm not bright, but what I do, as soon as the lectures start, each and every day, I sit on the day's work. I read it. When the test comes, I'm already ahead. When the exam comes, I'm already. So sit on day's work every day, every day. You will see what happens. I said, okay, but I think what he was telling me is that I know what happens in that room. And I know why you are not. But he did not, because I got to learn that he was never judgmental at all. I got to learn this. And he was very close to my mother. So every weekend he would say, I'm going home. I said, I am not going. He would visit my mother and I would say, hey, she's going to report, but never, ever once. So I think it improved, how I went on. So I told my friends, I said, hey, Bongani is asking about this room. They must never come here. People like him don't come in this room because we had seen that he's very, very structured, very serious. So that was him. He wanted the best for us. So I think even when we would be on holidays at home, he never would talk about his achievements. We heard that he had branched off from medicine, doing medicine to do BSc, but then to come back. But when we were on holidays, he never would talk about that I'm first in class and all of this. So this was not important. If you start that to congratulate him, he would start another subject and would ask you about how is that you told me you were going to do. And he remembered very well what you told me last time when we met him, what you wanted to do, and he would ask how it's going. So if you know that you haven't done that, we would tend to avoid him. Hey, let's avoid him. That thing hasn't worked well. But that was him, very humble. In their family, they were, I think when they were young, very stimulated. They would go to dance, they would have piano lessons, and I think at that time my parents were studying. So, but we never felt those types of things. They never would share those things, and that's how he was. Even as he grew up, his achievements were not what he would tell you first about. It's you who would ask them. A very, very kind person, yeah. So but I think I recall the last conversation I had with him was I had said to him that, I used to work on a program where I would bring in health professionals to Switzerland because they had a summer school. I think it was the Swiss tropical something, I can't remember now, Swiss TPU. So I said to Bongane, I realized that we don't have something like this here. It could be a winter school here, but then it's a summer. But of course, it could concentrate on issues around young people, taking theory to practice. And he listened very attentively and he said, next time when we meet, can you share a concept on this? So I think he was he followed very attentively to what you would say, and you would wonder how would he do this because he was very busy. But he would give you still the attention. Yeah.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to tell us a little bit about your interaction?
Oh, yes, indeed, but I think I would like to congratulate Dr. Dlamini and Dr. kutlwano was about this book, because I tell you, as you started, you said, you know, there was this pain that you wanted to relieve, and you decided to do the book. I think what this book represents and what it would help us about is that instead of casing the darkness, we should light the candle, and that is very, very important. And I'm glad that you are doing launches in several institutions, because that's what we should know as the health professionals, so that we can actually stand on this giant, for us to go forward. And then, of course, I commend Nonhlanhla and Umama Nonhlanhla and the family for allowing you to do this. So we met with Bongs 2002 at the CMSA. And in fact, he just came, was just standing obviously a little bit lost in some corner, and then he just came straight to me and said, what are you doing at the CMSA? We don't want marasmic people. I think I must have been thinner than now. So then he started to have interest in what I was doing, and that's true to the book, of course, to make you feel special and to make you feel welcomed, and that's what he did. And the link started there, and then we shared some ideas, of course, and therefore I regarded him as a friend and a mentor since then, and we interacted on several things ever since. And some of the important things were later in the CMSA itself, when we had to have problems, lots of problems and so on. The person I deferred to was actually Bongs, and then he would actually give very excellent ideas how to resolve the problems, and they worked, of course. And of course, we also interacted with several things in the Medical Research Council. And in fact, certainly, if, you know, we're supposed to have dinner on the 30th, the Monday, 30th of July, Glenda Wangani and myself, about research leadership, to which actually he's, and about the possibilities of research in infrastructure and institute. And then it's so sad that, I mean, I remember printing out that page, because I couldn't rely on the phone, so that I get to remember the restaurant that we were supposed to go to, something like Magic Roman in Pineland. I mean, in it, he was telling us what ideas he was going to put across to really advance research at large. And that there's several of those, but I mean, that was a bit painful. But I mean, the other interactions, of course, were in matters of the profession at large. When one was, again, with the South African Medical Research, Medical Summer, a lot of things were happening there. And then, and guess what, again, the person to defer to was Bongani, and he would, again, bring us together, because clearly all of us, we respected him, and that worked often. And in that way, we kept such a close relationship with him. And the relationship, unfortunately, it was one way, it was me asking what to do next and so on. But I think it's somebody that has really indeed, true to what his wife, the wife says, Nonhlanhla, he didn't like the pain. He really wanted to make sure he alleviates the poverty. And you can see in all that he does, that was the situation. And an example of that as well is how he actually transformed in the then Hamilton Nike scholarship, to which he actually, by the way, again, said to me, you must serve in this selectors committee. And then I served with him in that. And it was so interesting how we had to come to the conclusion of who we selected. And all the people that we selected, I think they are professors, heads of department. And that was because of his guidance that was there. And that really is so excellent. And he would say, let's say there's two of you that are really of perhaps equal thing. He would rather defer to the one that was financially or more needy, because he would, in his way, say, let us give petrol to the one that has got nothing. And that really makes sure that was to make sure that he does transform the community in which he lives in. And then again, that was one of the other things that, in fact, on the day before, the 26th, there was an interaction of the selectors who were interacting, how he wanted to actually, on the 4th of August, go home earlier and so on, and how the program must run. But anyway, I can continue with several examples, and all of those, they attest to the fact that indeed he was somebody that you could really rely on. He was superhumanly generous with his time and helping people, and that's what he enjoyed doing.
I think what comes out quite strongly in the book is how he really wanted to transform the lives of people around him, and not one or two people, but the entire community. And even beggars on the street, he wanted to make sure that they, he supported them. Prof. Kupe, through the university interactions and his role in transformation.
Like I said, I personally never met with, except the conversation we had on transformation. He had become dean then at health sciences at UCT. And these kinds of institutions with a particular history are very difficult in a sense to achieve demographic transformation in the first instance, but also demographic transformation not being the only thing you want to do, but also to bring people of many talents and experiences. Because in diversity, there is strength. And so you could tell also, I think, once you are a dean, the vice chancellor is always calling you about transformation and the transformation office. But also you could feel that he was interested in transformation. And I could hear from my discussion with him, he wasn't looking for standard solutions to transformation. Because remember, I said you had a Pan-African vision as well. So he said, no, just tell me what have you done. But I think he did say to me I should send him the program that I was running. And I did. I got his email and then I sent it to him. It was basically a program where we'd been fortunate to get money from some donor, where we could bring in, particularly at WITS, which was similar to UCT. The problem was that it was hard to get Black South Africans. It was easy to get white women to be blunt. It was easy to get people from the rest of the continent, but it was not easy to bring in Black South Africans. So we got in this money from a donor who said we could use it as we wanted. So I created this program called Diversifying the Academy. So the idea was that you bring Black South Africans, particularly who already had a PhD, into any field in the university, and you support them, to use their talents and their skills, to grow into the academy. And so I sent him the document. So the idea, I was responsible for transformation. The problem there was that the structure at WITS was that there were whites at the top, Africans from the continent, and then when you look at South African blacks, there was also a structure. There were, if you like, Indians at the top, Black South Africans, what people call Africans, and then coloreds. So how do you, in a sense, change that system? So it was a multi-year program. So by the time I left in 2018, it had actually come to what I really wanted, was Black South Africans at the top, Africans and then Africans from the continent. But you still, and it was now 50-50. 50% Black people, whether they are from South Africa or the rest of the continent, and 50%, if you like, what is by the racial constructs you call white. And so diversifying in that direction. But all people of talent, highly educated, highly qualified, because people are there actually. But again, the structural issues and the way of how do you change this? So my view was that it could be changed. It was not natural that it could be like that, yeah. And so we struggled with those things and he was grappling with that as the first Black dean of the UCT Faculty of Medicine, with a particular kind of history, as you know, and so on. And I think that would also have been competing with his time for other things. When I was a dean myself for 6 years, you are responsible for many things, not just transformation, right? So I always say that if you are a dean, there is a queue outside your office. It's a head of a department, some professor, it's a student, it's someone, all of very many different problems. And also, there might be your secretary saying the vice chancellor is calling. Yeah, and the deputy vice chancellor is calling. So you have to mix that. So I could I got a sense also of a person very committed to making that all of this works.
Professor De Jager, any thoughts from your side?
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, Dr. Dlamini, and well done. I look right at the book there, and that smile is just so, the memories that it's bringing back. And in addition to the books Professor Coupe ordered or requested, I asked the faculty to buy more books because I want our students to share in this, to learn from this, to be inspired through this. So thank you very much for capturing a bit of Bongani in this. I've heard about Professor Bongani Mayosi. The program he introduced for medical students, top performers, to be able to do honors, and then eventually, within 1 year, a PhD. And that was, to me, wow, he's creating those opportunities for those that we know our students are so talented, so bright. And he is changing systems to make sure that the individuals can reach their full potential. So as Deputy Dean for Research at that point, I invited him to our Faculty Research Day. And just one floor above this, Bongani was the guest lecturer that day, with a packed venue, with an inspiring message, but also intimidating because, remember, colleagues, he's an A-rated NIF scientist. And for those of you that know what that means, that's respect in itself. But the way he carried it, his story, his personality, is just amazing. So I got to get know Bongani slightly better. And when I became dean, and I think it was specifically a meeting in Port Elizabeth at the Nelson Mandela University, he was the vice chair of the South African Committee of Medical Deans. Martin Weller from WITS was the chair, and I was the new kid on the block. And I observed, but I learned from Bongani just to listen to him, to look how he's doing things, and everyone had respect for him. And when there was a difficult task or question on the table, the first person to ask was Professor Bongani Mayosi. And yes, I think he was due to become chair of the South African Committee of Medical Deans. And I had the honor to take up that position, which was not easy, especially during COVID. So many days I wish I could phone him and ask advice. To me, it was somebody that I truly respected, that I looked up to, somebody from whom I've learned so much just by being in his presence. So thank you for leaving us something that we can enjoy and think back of a real, true giant. Not only because he was an A-rated scientist, because he was a doctor of arts, he was an exceptional human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor De Jager, for those really kind and inspiring words. Before I open to the floor, is there anything else, Dr. Dlamini or Ms. Mfundi, if you'd like to share anything else?
Actually, I wanted to say, I forgot to mention that this dream that he had of skilling health or clinicians to reach a PhD level, and so that they are the ones that are solving our problems, health problems for the country. He had it even when he was still at university, he was studying, because, you know, when we were talking, so we asked him, so Bongani, what are you going to do? So I thought, you know, he would open a private practice, like I know Judy had opened a private practice, and many people who had graduated opened their practices, and they were doing well. So I thought, okay, this should be the line that he follows. His father also had his own practice. So he said, no, Fudo, he called me Fudo, I want to work in the public sector. I want to teach. I want to be part of the people that are contributing towards solving this country's problem. There's a lot of problems here. Our people have health problems. Some are related to poverty, you know, poor living conditions, you know, there are many, malnutrition. And he said, I want to be part of that cohort that solves this. So I want to be sure that there's a layer of people who are getting old, but we don't have Africans that are going to fill in these spaces. So I want to be part of that group that goes and studies, and we get others to be part of solving this problem. So he was determined in this, and he really worked hard on this one. I was surprised that years later he made it to happen through that scholarship that he was facilitating with Department of Health and many others. But I think what still today, you know, sometimes I wake up and say, really, is it true? Is it gone? But the word that still resonates, still rings in my mind is what Nonhlanhla, the wife, said, that Bongane never had a bad bone in his body, never, ever. He was, as you said, Prof, the most beautiful person, most humble person, who would stop and listen to you as if your story is big, and would even remember your story years after you'd forgotten. So, and I met someone just last week who said, oh, you know, I'm a psychiatrist today, I'm a professor. Actually, it's because of him. I said, really? He says, yes, he had said to me, why don't you follow this scholarship? And I followed it, and so that was him. So this book, actually, when I read it, it challenged me. That myself, I had not pursued as much as I think was possible. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Nomfundo. That's so true. The last time I saw him was beginning of 2018, and it was at our house. We had this big Goomba. I call it a Goomba with a purpose. At Res, we used to have Goombas. It's parties. You know that red light? The difference, though, is that it was UKZN alumni, and we were coming to talk about solving those problems. And he was talking about the PhDs, 1,000 PhDs that he was so keen of achieving in his lifetime. So I just want to recognize the wife to Prof. Phindile Mhla. Just raise your hand, thanks. Sorry that I didn't ask for your name. I don't like calling people people's wives or husbands. Yeah. Oh, Edith. Great. I'm so happy you're here. If you read the book, you'll see one of the most poetic persons that has contributed, that is Prof. Phindile Mhla. What I also want to say is that one of the reasons for the book, except for healing, for inspiration and informing, is to try and just add a little bit of petrol to the Bongane Mayosi Foundation. So the net proceeds of all the books will go to Bongane Mayosi Foundation. It's a tiny thing, but it just says, Bongani, we just want to put a wheel to a car that you left, and someone else will put the other one. It's a Zulu idiom. I'm not sure if it translates well to English. But yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I'll open to the floor. If there's any questions or comments. There's a question from Prof. Tivani.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It's not a question, it's a comment, and also something to say about Bongane Mayosi, whom I never met, but I was very much inspired by him as a medical scientist and someone who's really driven to make a difference. So it was people like Bongane Mayosi who inspired me to become part of the deanery in universities such as University of Pretoria. And yes, there are many challenges for people like me, Black South African, female, but because of him being in the position that he was in, being from the similar population group as myself, it made me realize that it's possible. And yes, the challenges are there, but we keep thinking of people like him and we want to make them proud. We know what he fought for, and he fought for us to be here. And we are here. And if Bongani can hear me, we are here, and the struggle continues. Aluta continua.
Thank you.
Okay, I have been put on the spot, but for a different capacity as a wife. Actually, I worked with Bongani quite a bit myself. I knew Bongani both from a professional and from a social perspective. I can't even remember from when I knew Bongani, because I even know his little girls when they were very little. I was actually hoping I was going to see them tonight, because I still have photos with them that I took in Oxford when they were very small, and I went to visit them. But Bongani and I, on a professional level, we were together when I was an executive at the MRC for research capacity development. We were together in an ASAF committee that developed clinical research guidelines. And it was around that time that his idea of 1,000 PhDs, in particular clinicians, was born. And he really just never stopped. Bongani would start an idea and he would run with it. And I also served with him in the National Health Research Committee for 2 terms, I think, where he was chair. And we worked extremely well. We even produced a report together. So I knew Bongani, and the things that have been said about him couldn't have been said better, because he was inspiring. We would have our own arguments. For instance, when I was in charge of research grants at the MRC, and Bongani would apply to get this grant and that grant and that grant. And sometimes it wouldn't be possible because UCT wasn't previously disadvantaged. Bongani would come in person and say, Nhlanhla, I used to call him Khadebe. What are you doing now? And I would say, Khadebe, your department now is showing lack of transformation, the way you're doing it. No, but my department is actually a typical rainbow nation. You must just look at it. And he would make his point, Bongani, and try to convince you. He really believed in his vision. He believed in people. He would actually poach people from Wits. I'm sure those who were at Wits were not happy. But he would actually say, you know what? I want to poach someone from Wits because I want to start this program within my department. The Clinical Research Center at UCT was actually started by Bongani. I remember him showing me a dilapidated building in the old Groot Schuur Hospital. And he was saying, I want to start a clinical research department here. It's going to have this and that and that and that. And I was like, okay, Bongani, what are you going to finance it with? And I was feeling intimidated because he was going to ask for a grant already. And he said, no, I'm going to go to the pharmaceutical industry. And it's amazing how he could convince people to give him money. And that clinical research center happened. You must see it today. It's functioning like crazy. But on a social level also, Bongani and my husband, who contributed to the book, come from the Eastern Cape. And my husband is older, obviously, but he was mentored by Bongani's father. And he used to talk about the determination that the young Bongani had, even as a child, and how he just stood out of other children. He was just amazing. His wife, Nhlanhla, we also had quite a lot of interaction with her because she's also from my village in KZN, which is coincidental. And you said, Nhlanhla used to say, Bongani didn't have one bad bone in his body. She used to have, he never had one mean bone in his body. That we remember like never before. The two of them were so close. That was such a very close-knit family. All our hearts just broke when Bongani departed. There are lots of jokes, of course, about Bongani and his shenanigans, especially from his girls, who I was hoping to see today, but I won't go there. One of them is that whenever he came to the local petrol station next to his house in Pinelands, all the petrol attendants would run to his car. And the daughter was actually surprised when she was driving that car in Audi TT one time. And she said, all the petrol attendants ran to my car, to Daddy's car. Daddy, why is that? Is this because they like the TT? No, they actually told her that it's because he gives petrol attendants a tip every time that he stops. So they all ran there. But there are lots of stories. And I must just say his departure was such a loss. On the day that he departed, he was awaited to join some meeting in Joburg. And that's how it was known that Bongani is not coming and he was never gonna come ever again. It was heartbreaking. Thank you.
Dr. Philman?
Thank you very much. I studied at UCT, and when I was a fourth year medical student, Dr. Mayosi came in as a registrar in internal medicine. And he would always grumble that things were going too slowly. He would shake his head, it's too slow, it's too slow. I just saw in the book that he hiked just to be in the company of his wife. So I think, hiking is very slow. So I think he would rather do a 100% sprint. So this is a man that I will miss a lot because of what is done, because of how we at UCT used to look up, at him. And I also feel sorry for UCT. I had an opportunity to work in Europe, the Latin Europe, and people would always, pay great homage when I said I studied in Cape Town. I said, Città del Capo. They would respect you just because of the name of the institution and of the reputation. So I would really like UCT and the other universities to maintain that reputation, but to seriously transform and really accommodate people who've been disadvantaged in the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we have the mic to the front, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to direct a question to the panel, in particular those who had the opportunity of working closely with him, but starting obviously with Dr. Dlamini. I promised her in adverts I'm going to come ask the question here because I didn't get a chance to ask it at adverts with the launch there. So clearly what we hear about Professor Bongani Mayosi is amazing. I mean, we hear a lot about his personal characteristics and the attributes that he has. I was at UCT as well as an employee and in the Faculty of Health Sciences, but there was one occasion where I had a chance to chat with him in a bit more detail. It was the passing of Professor Brian Keyes. And he was one of the people who paid a tribute there. And what he said, and in the formal tribute as well as in the informal discussion, told me that there's a lot more to this individual. There's some world vision here, there's some worldview rather here that he has. And we've come across, I think, some of the terms, transformation, empowerment, addressing with the diseases of poverty or the diseases of the poor, etc. And so the question I'm asking to Dr. Dlamini and others is, what are those core sets of principles, ideas, progressive ideas that compromise, that made up the worldview that a Mayosi has? When there was the memorial on the Monday after his passing on the Friday at UCT in the square, later on it was cold and students went in for their session. Just a quick comment on how they viewed him. And it wasn't an easy, I think, relationship because some of them occupied his office, etc. and so on. And one of them said that when they achieved something or there was some, cum laude or some clinical procedure, getting the needle in the first time and so on, it was called a Mayosi. So I'm hoping that through the book and those who remember him, that we would be able to inspire lots of young people who's getting through matric and into the academic world of theory and so on, to be Mayosis going forward. Not just individual actions or individual achievements, but Mayosis as in the person and the ideas that he obviously had. So my question, then coming back to it, and I'll end there, is what are those sort of key principles, core ideas? I heard Pan-Africanism as well, his ability to encourage research for the first time in African countries and do it without funding for the initial part or half of it, etc., and do great quality, first-class research. What are those core set of ideas? Because I think for me, that's the kernel. That's what I would like probably the youth and the younger generations to get to know more about. And that Professor Bongani Mayosi is the vehicle of, I think, promoting those sort of core ideas. Thanks.
Can I ask you to introduce yourself
Oh.
before Dr. Dlamini responds?
I'm Ashraf Raycliffe. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that question, Ashraf. There are so many qualities that Bongani had. One of them, and the most important one, is excellence, And the message I would like to send to our youth, not just in the Faculty of Health, in all faculties, to leadership in youth, is just believing that there is excellence in Africa. African excellence are not mutually exclusive. He believed it and he lived it. He was deliberate about looking out for the weakest in the value chain. What can I do? He was very deliberate about seeing goodness in people. It's interesting that if you don't have a bone of meanness or negativity in you, you then also assume that everyone doesn't have it. So you see goodness in people. And he had a way of lifting out that goodness, shining it back at you. When you read the book, you hear the different mentees talk about, he made me feel like I can do it. And I didn't realize that I can do it. What I hope is that, in the book, it's quite deliberate that it's a collection of reflections by people. And the people in the book are highly accomplished people. And it is a way of introducing those people to our youth across disciplines. So the Doctor of Hearts is typical of Bongani in so many ways. One of them is that Bongani actually was always lifting as he rose. He always shone a spotlight on people. That's what we're trying to do with the 78 contributors. And it also has an African element around it. The storytelling around the fireplace, where you actually had these conversations where the elders would share stories, and this book tries to do that in keeping with the Pan-African way of doing things. So he was a man of integrity. He cared a lot. He really, really cared. I don't know where he got that energy from. I don't know how he had such a big heart, but there are so many lessons that people can learn. The last thing that I want to say is that, when it comes to progressing in your career, when it comes to academia, it's easier to look at research areas that will actually parachute you. But he was not that way. Like there is a saying, there are many Bonganisms, those that were at UCT will know what I'm talking about. He would say, we tread where angels fear, because he would go and do research in an area where they say, people go and die there, nothing comes out of that. He'll do it anyway, because I think his mission in life was to show what's possible. It was to show how excellence presents itself in an African. So there's just so much to learn from his life. Thanks.
I think to what Dr. Dlamini says, it's really true. Ashraf, there's one of his quotes, as they say from Ngoza, they say we'll drop the standards, but we'll show them that actually we'll raise the bar. that speaks to the youth and the youngsters. For instance, the older generation like say that these chaps are going to drop their standards. To the youth there, if you take what Bongane said, actually you should raise their standards and you can do that. And he has shown how. And he also had actually shown that you can have a balance, including to the Nomfundo who was older and work hard and play straight, that you had to work hard and play straight indeed. But importantly, he also had mentioned that really if your education or your skills is not going to help the community around, such as the research that is relevant, the TB pericarditis, then it's irrelevant. And that's important. And that speaks to how the farmer or the industry sometimes can push you to a certain way of doing research. But I mean, he would drag them to where he wanted to do. I mean, such as he did with the IMPs, the IMP trial, and of course, and again, to affirm the Africanness. I also like the fact that when he was getting to be the head of medicine, what he said about Hippocrates and Imhotep, that we should actually realize that, in fact, the father of medicine is Imhotep and not Hippocrates. If you check what Imhotep is, that is inspiring, that is making people to believe in themselves and actually to go forward. And that's an important message. But he also makes us to be cautious of the fact that we shouldn't actually, as we do this, be in it for shiny. And in that, you must build systems. You must develop capacity, and true capacity, excellent capacity as you do that. And then, of course, look at innovation, and to which he has actually done those things. And in that way, things will be sustainable. We wouldn't be sitting here, this lovely book wouldn't be written if he actually hadn't done things that are sustainable. But again, of importance is that, I mean, you can be innovative, you can do research, but it's important to also have love and care for people. And that's what he
Thank you, Prof.
In fact, if I may, in addition to what Judy and the Prophet said, I think also part of it, as you say, it was not about him being shown that he can achieve these things, but it's also about serving. I think for him it was important to be seen, to serve the people. So that too was what drove him.
Could I ask you to please introduce yourself, sir, please, before you...
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Tabangwenya. I think I'm a PhD candidate here at University of Pretoria, but I also work as a lecturer at the Department of Industrial and Systems Engineering. So I think, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, because reading this book, there's a lot of things with it, and I think I resonate with the previous speaker when the question that he had, because I think it speaks to us as youth, I think more than anything. And then part of it, or what I would love to see, I think maybe to the authors and to everyone, it's these books needs to be in the schools, I think in high schools, even in primary. These are the books that we need to start reading in secondary schools and high schools, because I think how the education system is structured now, we don't actually get to know about such heroes in communities. For a kid who's in township or deep rurals, they don't know about such wonderful individuals, because these are the biggest giants who have contributed so much in South Africa, in Africa, I think. And what makes me sad now, I think, understanding the vision that he had, and also being an individual that actually put forth Africa and understanding the roots of South Africa and Africa. Because now with a lot of what's happening in South Africa, you hear a lot of youth saying, I want to go to UK because of the issues here. So I don't know how, but then I think and I'm pleading to everyone who's here, because I think most of everyone who's here, you guys are senior than me, but these books needs to go to the Department of Education. We need to start seeing our siblings reading these stories, because they need to be the ones that tells these stories, not the other way around, because I think the impact of what he has done, and I think many other great leaders, such as yourselves as well, We need to hear more about you guys, not about the history of Germany, the history of Western. This is not to say it's not important, but I think it's important to know about our own roots and those that have actually walked the journey and actually showed us that whatever that we envision as youth, it's possible. But then it's possible with the support of the great leaders that have been here and are still contributing to the South African economy. Because the South African youth now, most of them want to leave South Africa, and that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So we need to think very clearly about how do we get such messages to the community. It's very important.
Thank you. I can't agree with you more. I'll ask Prof. Kupe to comment on.
No, I like his comment because also if you remember in my speech I said that he was also known as the Madiba of medicine. And so for me it's, you see, I think that what Mandela and his generation did was to create a platform for people like Bongani also to, you know, if whether you call it magic or whatever, for me he symbolizes a lot of commitment at multiple levels to become also the new Madibas that can inspire people. Because as you know, with the political heroes, not Madiba himself, but others that are still alive, the youth you are speaking about do not exactly find them inspirational. And also the terrain of the struggle has changed. You need new struggle heroes, you know, operating on the platform created post-94. And these are the new heroes, if you like, that a student at a medical school can relate to and also can see that it can take you somewhere without you leaving South Africa. Going to the UK as he did, Rhodes Scholar, Oxford, but coming back to prosecute his struggle on the continent. And those are also struggles that our youth can actually relate to much more easily. You remember during Face Must Fall, even the young people, some of them were saying, you know, Madiba was a sellout, which is really harsh and a lack of understanding of history and the moment that Madiba, what he had to do. But also they were calling for new heroes and new heroes that they can actually relate to. So I think your point is actually spot on. Yeah.
This is Judy. I'm here. This is Judy. Ukutala said she's going to be here. My name is Kanyo Kulu. I am not sure if you do remember interaction that you've had with her recently. I had interaction with you before, but way back. But I'm not sure if you remember. Ebete, she's going to send you something. And I think it was either 3 or 4 days ago when she said so. But anyway, I do have pieces of paper here that are going to back that up. She was supposed to be here in part because there's a connection between my family and the family Mayosi. First from my father and the father Bongane Osipo. And then my brother, my elder brother, who's very close friends of Osipo from the time that they were, I think, at junior secondary to high school. I then met Bongane when he was about to leave high school. We went to the same high school, St. John's College. And I was more closer to Usistawak. Lo was supposed to be here today, who's not. And illustration, maybe to just 2 or 3 points. The first one is, when he left St. John's, he was also an editor of a newspaper called the Fortnightly Chart. He saw something in me, I suppose, because he asked me to be the editor afterwards. He went to convince the school principal and whoever else that this guy should take over. I didn't even last 6 months because I decided to put a French page story of a so-called terrorist then who had bombed Mzamba. And in part because 2 of those comrades were ex-students of St. John's. So principal and whoever else, they didn't like the fact that the front page story was that so. And then they were so angry, and then they wanted something to be done about it. But fortunately, the whole, I suppose, group that was doing the newspaper were friends of mine. So we decided to come up with a tactic that I'll say I'm leaving the top, but I'll still be in the newspaper, so that then we have somebody who's more presentable to be the editor. The second thing about Bongane was we interacted a lot on him trying to tell a whole lot of people that mathematics is just a language. And if you can understand the building blocks of that language, you'll be able to get it. Of course, we argued back and forth about it because we couldn't understand why is it a language. There are no verbs, there are no adverbs that we can see. You know, there's no verb tense agreement, but he called it a language anyway, so that we could be able to understand it better. The other thing about him is that he was not dogmatic. He was very, I suppose, tactical in his approach to arguments or conversations that got heated. One of the things that we would argue about, again, back and forth, is that remember that it was a time in which there was the East and West, in which if you were progressive, you supported the USSR. And if you're not, you supported the other side. So he was trying to say, there's this thing about Stalin and what Stalin has done. So don't take this thing at face value. You must also look at what this other side is doing that is not positive, so that you don't just swallow it whole and say you're supporting them because they are what and what and what. And the last anecdote was because the families were very close or were connected, I was asked by my family to go to Kokwabo when Usipho was coming out, with circumcision ceremony, to represent my family. And so I was given a lot of duties there, the slaughtering, the counseling, and also later on in the evening, they said I must be a DJ. What they didn't know is I wanted that opportunity to be a DJ there, not for what they wanted, which was people to enjoy themselves and what have you, because I was already deep underground by then, struggle-wise. So I decided to put in there an album that had Mary Makebe. It was band, Mira Makebe, no Harry Belafonte. You remember the songs that were there? Bahleli bonke Ntulongweni, Basopa, Nanzi Ndoda Mnyama Felefut, and all of those songs. So I put them in and locked the musical system so that this thing played. And I put it at full blast, then disappeared into the night. There was a felt par that is not so far from where they lived. Hey, out comes Ubongane, something like 30 minutes after, because one, nobody was dancing. Two, the adults were pissed because it was so loud that anybody could hear these songs. Now, since the songs were banned and they were revolutionary, it could have made the family to be in trouble. So finally, Shem Ubongane finds me and says, "I can use man. Yintoni yenza mfundisi uyakhala pha umama ile nto yenzileyo pha." So I went back and I was able to change it, but after at least we were sure, something like 45 minutes or so had gone on. So people have had it. It didn't matter the fact that people are pissed and whatever you saw, I was able to change it. And I think the last interaction I had with him was when he was at Oxford. That is over communication. He had sent a lot of emails to people in South Africa, and unfortunately, he said outside of the immediate family, not even one person responded. And he couldn't understand why, because he took his time out of his busy schedule, out of his research, to communicate with people, but nobody was communicating. And what also people are not familiar with is, most of the time, we didn't call him by his name. We called him Yesituku. Ebe ngubhungane, undlebe enhle zombini, usho abadana. Lento bemnyama kodwa amazinyo ekhanya. Sisithi ngathi inkanyezi ezinzulwini zobusuku. He had a smile, an unending, infectious, pleasant, connecting, well-embracing smile that didn't end. Yena and my elder brother looked alike so much that they used to say that, "Magodin, likhona ixhego elimoshileyo apha," because you can't have these people looking alike like this. And I just thought that in terms of what the legacy is, for me, I just thought of three things. The number one thing that I thought Ubongane did, not just for this country, not just for this, for the continent, but I suppose, first of all, for anybody who is either than white. For anybody who's other than white, he showed the highest echelons of intellectual pursuits can be reached by a person who's other than white. Especially in a country, especially in a continent that continuously said for so many years that if you were black, your job was to fetch water and to chop wood. The fact that he chose that path in the first place, he said it was because his father said, if you want to make a difference, go into medicine, but not just to be a medical doctor that is practicing, but come out with new knowledge, which is what he did. So that is the first point for me. The second point I think he did is, The Economist once wrote, and it perpetuated this thing for a while, that Africa is a basket case, is a dark continent. Thabo Mbeki tried to fight this point for a long time. And then a Wits University professor, I just forget his name, did the research that found out that Africa is a cradle of humankind. And then it became the only thing we could cling on when we were being criticized, but we are the cradle of humankind. I think what Ubongane has done is to say, beyond being a cradle of humankind, Africa is actually a contributor to the development and the advancement of humanity. Why? Because when he did his research in Oxford and he came up with this specific valve, the issue with it, it advances humanity because it cures people. Now that you know what the problem is. It's new knowledge that people are using to live longer because of it. So Africa is therefore contributing to the advancement of humanity and society. It is not just a cradle of humankind. So I think that's what he also did with this research of his. I suppose the last thing is inspiration. He is saying to anyone, you can be black, you can be white, you can be rich, you can be poor. And I suppose in a country specifically where we're still fighting the issue of the advancement of women here, especially black women, he is saying he didn't come from a lot of money himself, first of all. And secondly, there were disadvantages that he had to face to push through in order to get where he got. But he showed an example of if you're persistent, if you're focused, if you're diligent, you will get there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a hand up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gloria Koza, and I'm a student, a BCom Accounting Sciences student here at the University of Pretoria. And as a person that is passionate about people, I look at myself and I see an advocate for women. But now, coming from a small township called Winterveld in Mabopane, I now see myself as an advocate for the kids at from my township. So I normally, from year to year since 2021, I run a project called Building Victorious Women. So that is a project that I ran because I identified a need from the township of pads. Young girls need pads. I came across a situation where I saw a young girl using something else other than a pad, and that also it woke a thing in me to start this project, you know. And then it now led to me wanting to see the kids dream. And it thus led to me having yearly events. Okay, I named it Building Victorious Women. It continued to provide pads, but now its main aim is to encourage the young girls in townships to dream. So from year to year, I invite women, successful women in corporate, successful women in academia, and successful women in business to come and encourage the young girls to dream, to show them the possibilities that it is possible to hold a PhD as a child from a a small township, you know. It is possible to start a business and to have it thrive in our generation. Even though they don't have the resources. But from that one event that they have from year to year, they get the motivation to actually dream. I had a speaker last year that is a child accountant. I'm also looking onto her. So she dared the kids to dream. So when Tabang and I had a conversation about this book, I've never read about it before, but like the way he spoke about it, I actually became very inspired. And today I was not feeling well, and he literally was like, you know what, stop taking and let's go. Him and his wife, Sihe here. And I was actually encouraged to come today, and I would just like to say, Dr. Judy, thank you so much. When looking at this book, I see a book that the kids, okay, I call them my girls, but now that the boys are also included, because they're also allowed to dream in as much as they are from a township without resources and stuff. So with this book, I feel like they could grasp a lot from it if they can get books and have a read about the story of Mr. Bongani Mayosi. And I feel like after reading the book, we can actually give them a platform to write about what they want to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we need more young leaders like you to stand up and take an initiative and make our communities better. Dr. Dlamini, you've been involved in programs like that, or you've supported such programs. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, actually, I can see where you're coming from, and I actually am aligned with what you're trying to achieve, because everything I have been able to do was based on seeing someone who looks like me, who was that, and I became that. And I really believe that we need to show up in the townships, in the rural areas. So I do go to townships and rural areas with books and talk to young people and share the stories of people that have done well, who look like them. So yeah, Tabang knows we okay. We'll connect. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Are there any last closing comments from the floor?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sihe. And in the beginning, when Professor Kupe was talking, I think he mentioned that Bongani took his life. I stand corrected. Dr. Judy, this question is for you, because I think you did mention that there were a lot of mixed emotions around his death and passing. So I think my question is that, what was the turning point for you to kind of redirect your anger into an inspiration to write a book of this nature? Because what I'm picking up in the room is that he was quite an inspirational person. And I'm guessing that how he passed was very devastating for a lot of people. So as a person who has lost people that I care about to suicide as well, I think it must have been very challenging for you and the other author to actually get to that point where, say, maybe you forgive him if you had to and redirect your anger. So what was that determining moment for you?
Let's start by saying I didn't need to forgive Bongani, right? Life happens. We can't judge. He led a life that never judged. So, pack that. I was angry because whenever death happens, I find it easier to be angry than sad, no matter how the death happened, because I'm a fighter. You know, with anger, it's like, I'm going to solve this. The third thing is that I'm very alive to mental health issues. I'm very alive to young people taking their lives and the challenges, the different challenges when it comes to mental health. And just because this book is not about death, it's about life, it doesn't mean we are closing our minds to that very important subject. So what I've taken upon myself is to collaborate with a young doctor who's specializing in psychiatry. He was one of the panelists in the many launches I've done in the country. And we want to start Doctors of Minds, where we'll invite people to share their stories, because I think why I say I relate to you is that I think life is not about complaining. Yes, there are people who complain, it's okay. That's how they solve issues. Life is about what am I exposed to, what is it saying to me, and what can I do about it, you know? And there is so much that we can do. Just sharing the stories, allowing someone who's going through a major depression, who's tried suicide, families that have been experienced to losing loved ones to mental health issues. That's the contribution. So my take, therefore, is that we are here for a purpose. We get exposed to situations for a purpose. And the purpose is bigger than one book. It's actually saying what else is there and what are you doing about it. So as long as you have life, you have a responsibility. I hope I've answered you.
Thank you. That's fine. Can we bring the mic to the front?
Thank you. So thanks for having a second bite at this. And I'm going to start off with the last point. So at the time of the passing of Professor Mayosi, as a staff member at UCT and so on, and also getting a sense from the students how they felt, because they saw him as a great leader, somebody who listened, who marched with him to go and offer their demands to the administration, etc. I don't believe that Professor Bongani Mayosi took his life. I believe that Professor Bongani Mayosi passed away because whilst having overcome so many mountains, and we've spoken about it tonight, in different fields, in academia. I mean, not just a cardiologist, not just a healer, not just a teacher, a mentor, etc., both on the South African, on the continent, and global fields. At the time, there was an Afrikaner professor at Stellenbosch University who had lost her son, and she made an appeal to the students. I'm not sure if people can remember that. I think the take-home point for me at the time was people don't take their own lives when they are faced with mental health challenges. It's the mental health challenges that is the cause of the loss of life for me. And to shift from that to the point that I'm reminded that Professor Bongani Mayosi was a rural boy who started school in a small church hall, I think, with multi-grade. And I think it's an important message to those who are the architects of our education system at the time. That those, I think it's called multi-grade classes in rural places and so on, worked and generated a Mayosi. And I think the key point for me is that, when there's a farm worker whose daughter achieves the master's and the PhD and whose granddaughter is interested in medicine, what is it there that we have now, the resources to ensure that those individuals can reach that phone number, that email address, that office where they can make the request and be considered on merit, etc. But in the spirit of the Mayosi spirit, also to ensure that, we lift as we rise. And so that we can see if we can achieve that 1,000 PhDs, not necessarily over the 10 years that he envisaged, but over a time that we can manage. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like each of the panel members to give us some of their closing remarks, please. Dr. Dlamini, would you like to start?
Yeah, this was truly special. I'm grateful. I knew I could reach out to my VC. When you're selling, you always start with someone that is going to support you, so that you galvanize that, okay, I can go to the rest. So thanks. Thanks for that. And for that, I have a gift for you from Kutala, who actually, it's Kutala and Sifiso Publishers that want you to have this scarf in honor of Ubongani.
Should wait immediately.
Oh. And we appreciate your commitment to causes that are important for the country and the continent. And thanks so much to fellow panelists and the work that you do. Nomfundo, we go a long way. We've come a long way. And I'm really encouraged. Ashraf, you meant your words when you said you would come. And I'm happy that you did come. And I'm encouraged to see quite a few young people here. Yeah, you know, we believe that you have what it takes to take this country and this continent to where it belongs. And it's actually stories and people like Bongani and the people in the book that will actually make it accessible and possible for you. And yeah, I now owe you. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, yes. I see Bongani's nephews are here. Yeah, he also really mentored them and cared a lot about them. But just to say that, I think I would say congratulations to Judy for this book. It's very inspiring. And in fact, it throws a challenge to many of us, yeah, when we read it. Thank you. Yeah.
I just would like them to say their names, Bongani's nephews and nieces, please, if possible.
Yes, nephews and nieces.
Yes,
That's
sure.
okay.
Please, go ahead.
I'm testing. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Simani Mukhutlwan. I do have something very short to say.
No problem. Please go ahead.
So I obviously speak about Dr. Mayosi in the capacity as my uncle. And he was intensely passionate about helping people realize their dreams. And even my experience with him, he was unconditionally loving and very supportive. And he dreamed with me no matter how many times I changed my dreams. But he always, always encouraged me to dream as an African child because it is possible. And he always encouraged passion and excellence in everything we do. That's all. Thank you.
Are the nephews here?
Where's the
Who else is here?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lifale Sumbuli, also nephew of Uncle Bongani, and my brother behind me as well, Zugile Mbuli. I'm Uncle Bongani again. I don't really have much to say beyond the fact that I do agree with my cousin in the sense that he was a person who held your hand through every journey, every path, especially academically. I do attribute a lot of my success currently, where I am currently, to him. A very, very big figure in our lives. And yeah, thank you.
Could I ask the family members to come forward? Who else is here? Thank you for joining us. Where is the mic? Do you want to say anything, sir? Give us your name. Tell us who you are.
I'm Zukile Mbuli. And yes, I'm Uncle Bogani's nephew.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. And thank you for sharing his journey with us. Professor Kupi, do you want any closing remarks?
Yeah, well, thank you for the scarf, which I'm already wearing. But the reason why I agreed immediately to the book was simply not that, my chancellor's word is my command. There was something else behind that, is that it's not a criticism to us in academia, but it was also interesting that this book, to remember Mayosi, did not come from within the academic community as such, but from people like yourselves who could see what he was contributing beyond the academy into society. So we like to talk about legacies, but I like a phrase that goes something like this, that people like Bongani Mayosi have living legacies. Because legacy sometimes means an achievement of the past that's almost relevant to the past. But there are achievements and legacies that are living today. And for me, Bongani is a great example of living legacies.
Thank you. Dear.
Thank you. Colleagues, Professor Cooper, thank you for always being a good leader and to support the right choices, the right courses. You'll notice that our VC has got crazy socks for docs on. One of the courses that he is always supportive on, and I think that says a lot for you that understand that we need to look at each other's mental health, well-being in today's time after COVID. But I cannot help thinking here where we sit in a new 21st century library. We at Health Sciences at the University of Pretoria aspired to be #LifeChangers. Bongani was a #LifeChanger. And with the new technologies, the fifth and fourth industrial revolution, the XR toy box, we will make sure that Bongani's story will be in this library for our generations and new doctors to come, to be inspired by that and to take medicine and being a human to the next level. So thank you for everybody that inspired us, and Bongani's story will be in the Health Sciences Library at the University of Pretoria.
Thanks. I think this book is really important. It teaches us really that you must be authentic and care deeply for people. Really, Bongani cared for people, and therefore I could trust him. Maybe I should tell a narrative that I actually told Os Judy now. That in fact, to show that one trusted him with his life, when my first son passed and then he had to do medicine, he was taken at both. I might not have a job after this, but he was taken for medicine at both UP and UCT, and then I said, yeah, I don't know, the slight what must he do? So I phoned Bongani, of course, and then he said, Mike, it's clear what has to happen. I think you know the rankings, and then you know what is the best place. But I mean, actually, he went on to look after him as well, and then he was actually in the, the scholarship, the research program that was there, the MBCHB research. And really, that is because I mean he wanted to emulate what Bongani was doing, and that's very important. But I mean, Bongs as well. What is important about him is that, as this book will tell the people, is that I mean he said we must lift as we rise. I mean maybe we take it light, but I mean indeed we often say we are successful, but that success means nothing if we are not lifting the others, if we are not developing those around us. And really, this book will teach us that. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Dr. Spencer Nkosi, who's the head of Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Tembisa Hospital, to give us some of the closing remarks.
Dear esteemed colleagues, those who are in this room and also online, we've come to the end of this wonderful launch program. First, I would like to thank the UP Faculty of Health Sciences for hosting us in this wonderful new building in honor of one of our literary academic giants, Professor Bongani Mayosi, who is true to his name. I think he was called Jongilizwe. That's his name that I read in the book, the one who actually looks after everyone in the land. It is evident that he was actually, he left a big footprint in research and advancing science, and also the collaborations that he was involved in. First, to our wonderful and gracious program director, Professor Pillay, thank you. Thank you for your wonderful emceeing. And then to Professor Kupe, VC, and our principal. Thank you for wonderful welcome address that you shared with us. And thank you for the 100 copies that you've donated. And from the public and the benefit of the publishers, and also as part of to expand the knowledge or the information that this book is sharing, that you are allowed that you buy this copy so that the future students are able to read and to know more. And as other panelists have talked and guests here, that this book actually is an epitome of one of the literary giants in an African soil. Professor Diacher, thank you for your wonderful sight and leadership. And thank you for the extra 30 copies of which it will grace our guests in this room and those also that have joined online. Thank you very much. I don't know whether I should say a round of applause for that. To our two wonderful authors, Madlamin and Kopano Matlamabaso, this book is actually, for me, when I read this book, it's actually a reflection of Professor Mayosi. And what I actually find quite astounding is actually the people that you interviewed in the book, because I call them, some of them, as in their own right, they're literary giants, and some of them are very academic, esteemed scholars. And for me, just to realize that this is a close knit of friends, that was actually quite astounding. And this book for me reflects a man who was very generous, a man who was a father, was a brilliant father, a black father, to 4 wonderful girls. Historian, I love the fact that he was a historian, because I read that most of his research, he named them after battles, like Impi. And I think one of his research is called Battle of Isandlwa. I love history as well and war stories. And foremost, it was that he was a loving husband. In this day and age, it was something that is sometimes very rare, but a loving husband. And the friends, the group of friends that I read about in that dress, I think it's called Andrew Taylor, if I'm not mistaken. Alan Taylor, that these were a group of friends that met at a dress, and then later on, they rose and became these wonderful literary scholars. And they embodied academics and research and later became these literary giants. Mam Nomfundo, thank you for the wonderful stories you shared about this family, the Mayosi and the Mbuli family. And thank you, Prof. I was going to ask everyone to raise, but you've already beaten me that part of my speech. Thank you for, in absentia to Mam Nontlandla, also, for the stories that this book actually encapsulates about this wonderful man. Was also a ballroom dancer, or like a Latin dancer. And for me, the story of the Mayosi and the Mbuli family embraces what I call about Ubuntu philosophy. Because in all the members in this family are actually very well-learned scholars. I was quite impressed with that as well. Even the next generation is a generation of scholars. You can see that from Ntate Reverend Mayosi's part, and to Professor Mayosi's father was also a gynecologist. To everyone in the family, you can see this is a family of scholars. And they marry, and the people who marry in this family also become scholars as well. Professor Sateche, thank you for your shared experiences as well. It is true that they say that the iron sharpens another iron. And to the rest of the panel members and guests in this room, and those that are online, I'm left with everyone's question that Mr. Ashraf also mentioned, the 1,000 PhD story. It's for us in this room and also online to pick it up and grow it more. I love the fact that he embraced that he did research not because it was easy, but because it had to make changes. It is true, Prof. Diacher, that the research that we should do should be a research that is meaningful and actually impacts or improves quality of life. And it is true that African stories can be told. And we shouldn't look at what you call heroes outside Africa. We do have our own heroes. I wanted to quote something from the Black Panther, but I'll leave it. Thank you to our IT teams for the wonderful IT support. Thank you to our head of marketing and the whole team, Cindy Siwe. Ron, Karin, Flav, and other faculty members that I've not mentioned by name, to FISO publishers who have made this also part of this event possible. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all the guests in this room and those that are online that have been gracious enough to listen. And we've got a story to tell and to share with everyone when we leave this room. With that, safe travels to everyone, and I thank you.
At the University of Pretoria's Faculty of Health Sciences, we believe in unearthing potential. We believe in our students' potential to make a positive impact in society and to produce research that shifts boundaries. In order to help students reach their full potential, the Faculty of Health Sciences has established the Life Changers Fund. Partner with us to help our life changers reach their full potential by contributing to the Student Solidarity Fund. Your contribution will help support students who are in need to pay for accommodation, tuition, food, and procure PPE. Join us and help support our students to reach their full potential. Through any contribution, you can be a life changer too. Developing life changers together.